A question that I get asked pretty regularly is what bands someone should check out if they want to start listening to metal, and I always have a hard time with that question because I feel like it's such a diverse genre that I never really know where to start someone if I don't at least have some kind of preconception of what they already listen to. My intro to goth video was pretty easy because you usually just start people off with the staples, but metal, there aren't really, I would say, necessarily like staple bands that everyone starts with. It's at least not quite the same for everyone, I've noticed. So I figure what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll list off some of the main bands that people usually start with when they're first getting into metal, and then I'll go ahead and branch out into different subgenres, at least some of the main ones, because there's so many, and I'll just recommend you a couple of albums and things like that for each one. Some of the bands that people often first hear about and then start listening to, we've got Black Sabbath, Dio, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Metallica, Ozzy Osbourne, Megadeth, Slipknot, Korn, Motley Crue. There's probably some other newer bands kind of like Five Finger Death Punch that I'm not as aware of that people are getting into because I'm not as in tune with the radio nowadays, but those are the ones that I often most hear about with people first getting into metal. Alright, so delving into some of the different subgenres of metal, we'll go ahead and start with some of the classics, also known as traditional heavy metal. Of course, we've got to talk about Black Sabbath. It's good to note that a lot of people often consider Black Sabbath to be the first metal band, and I would say that most people probably start out with their 1970 album Paranoid. I know this was at least my first Sabbath album. This album's got some of Black Sabbath's most popular songs, which include War Pigs, Paranoid, and Iron Man. I can almost guarantee you've probably at least heard one of those. Another one of my favorite Sabbath albums is their 1971 Master of Reality, and I'd say probably their two most popular songs on this one are going to be Children of the Grave and Orchid. Then in 1980 we've got Black Sabbath's Heaven and Hell. Some people don't consider this one to be a true Black Sabbath album because Ozzy Osbourne is no longer on vocals. Instead, Ronnie James Dio, formerly of Rainbow, later on we'll talk about his solo project, he becomes the new vocalist for Black Sabbath. At least for a few albums. Regardless, this is one of Black Sabbath's more popular albums. I think it's hard to say what tracks are the most popular off of this album aside from Heaven and Hell. That's definitely the definitive one. But some of the ones that people also really enjoy are Neon Nights, Children of the Sea, Lady Evil, and Die Young. Since I just mentioned Dio and Black Sabbath, we'll go ahead and talk about his own band next, called Dio. This is the most well-known Dio album, titled Holy Diver, came out in 1983. This might be my all-time favorite album art. This is probably the Dio album that almost everyone starts with and is definitely the biggest fan favorite. It's got songs like Holy Diver, Rainbow in the Dark, and one of my very favorites, Don't Talk to Strangers. And the logo, if you look at it upside down, is supposed to say Devil. Dio's second album, Last in Line, came out in 1984. The most popular songs on this one are going to be We Rock and Last in Line. A couple of fun facts about the Dio albums. The demon mascot that you see on many albums, including these two, has a name. His name is Murray. Dio's third album, Sacred Heart, came out in 1985. The most popular tracks on this one are going to be Sacred Heart, Rock and Roll Children, one of my very favorites, and Hungry for Heaven. And a fun fact about the tour for this album is that Dio actually had a mechanical dragon on stage that he would fight at some point during the set with a laser sword. I just think that that's so cool. Next is my all-time favorite band, Judas Priest. They're another one of the bands like Black Sabbath that helped define metal as a genre. This is their 1976 album, Sad Wings of Destiny. Two of the biggest songs on this album are The Ripper and Victim of Changes. Victim of Changes is probably my all-time favorite song. Maybe not one of their most talked about songs, but I also highly recommend listening to the song Dreamer Deceiver off of this album. They actually started out as kind of a progressive experimental blues band, so you can definitely catch some of the blues influence in this album. In 1980, they came out with British Steel. The most notable tracks on this album are going to be Breaking the Law, Metal Gods, and Living After Midnight. And here's some fun facts from British Steel. The cardboard guitar that you see in the Breaking the Law music video was meant to be the shape of a flying V guitar. Someone accidentally created it backwards though, but the band thought it was so hilarious that they decided to keep it in. And in the song Metal Gods, you can hear the sound of metal crashing. It's supposed to emulate the sound of robots marching in unison. To get this sound, the band used drawers of silverware they found in the recording studio. In 1982, Screaming for Vengeance was released. The two biggest songs on this one are Electric Eye and You've Got Another Thing Comin'. This is their 1984 album, Defenders of the Faith. The big songs on this one are Free Will Burning, The Sentinel, and Love Bites. I'd say this album serves you all the cheesy 80s heavy metal goodness you could want. And then of course we've got Painkiller from 1990. The big songs on this one are of course Painkiller, we've got Nightcrawler, and A Touch of Evil. Painkiller is also often thought to be Judas Priest's heaviest and fastest album, and it contains a lot of lyrical themes in the realm of dark fantasy. It's also good to note that part of the stereotypical metal look of wearing leather with studs and spikes actually stems from Judas Priest. It's pretty well known that Rob Halford started this, taking his inspiration mostly from S&M and being in the gay community. Next, we've got Iron Maiden. Their first two albums, Iron Maiden from 1980 and Killers from 1981, had vocalist Paul Di'Anno. These ones have a little bit of a different feel from some of their other albums later on. I would say that these two have a little bit more of a punk vibe to them. Both really solid albums. Then in 1983, they released their third album, Number of the Beast, and they switched to a new vocalist, Bruce Dickinson. I would say that Bruce Dickinson is probably the vocalist of Iron Maiden that most people think of. This album's got a lot of their really well-known songs on it. It's got Children of the Damned, Run to the Hills, Number of the Beast, and Hallowed Be Thy Name. In 1983, we've got Peace of Mind. Some of you guys might recognize this album from the scene in Stranger Things.
Seriously, what is all this shit?
I mean, what are you even looking for?
Madonna, Blondie, Bowie, Beatles, music! We need music!
This is music!
Well-known songs off of this one are going to be The Trooper and Flight of Icarus. Then in 1984, we get Power Slave. Two of the big songs on this one are Aces High and 2 Minutes to Midnight. In 1992, we've got Fear of the Dark. The big songs on this one are Be Quick or Be Dead, Wasting Love, and Fear of the Dark. Another one of Iron Maiden's most distinguishable characteristics are Steve Harris's galloping bass lines. And fun fact about Iron Maiden is the mascot that you see on every album and running around on stage is known as Eddie the Head. Now, many of you might already know who Ozzy Osbourne is, either as the Prince of Darkness or the singer of Black Sabbath, maybe even the Osbournes TV show. Here's his 1980 album, Blizzard of Oz. It's got two of his most well-known songs on here, Mr. Crowley and Crazy Train. Bark at the Moon came out in 1983. The most popular song on this one is Bark at the Moon. Rock and Roll Rebel is also fantastic, and my favorite song is Waiting for Darkness. And then my favorite Ozzy album, at least lately, has been Ultimate Sin, which came out in 1986. I'd say the popular songs on this one are probably Shot in the Dark, Ultimate Sin, and Secret Loser. More bands should totally use dark fantasy style artwork because I'm so in love with this. And a fun fact about Ozzy, if you somehow haven't heard this one already, is that he did bite the head off of a bat on stage. He also bit the head off of a dove on live TV. He's definitely called the Madman for a reason. Motorhead's Ace of Spades came out in 1980. I would say the most popular songs on this one are Ace of Spades, We Are the Road Crew, and Jailbait. For anyone who's not familiar with Lemmy, the bassist and vocalist of Motorhead, he was very ingrained in the punk scene. So if you like early punk music, you might find some similarities in Motorhead. Twisted Sister's Stay Hungry came out in 1984. We're Not Gonna Take It and I Wanna Rock are certainly the most well-known songs by this band and are both on this album. They've got some extremely fun music videos that go along with them. And for any of you who are around my age or grew up with SpongeBob, you might also recognize this song, which was based off of Twisted Sister's I Wanna Rock.
I'm a kid, you say when you say I'm a kid, I say it again, and then I say thank you very much.
And as great as those songs are, I definitely don't think that they're a great representation of this band as a whole. They are an absolutely fantastic band. I highly recommend giving the songs Burn in Hell and The Price a listen as well. And also exploring beyond this album as well is a fantastic idea. Next up is Warlock with their 1984 Burning the Witches. Fan favorites off of this album are Sign of Satan and Burning the Witches. This one has a little bit of thrash flavor to it, which just makes it so energetic and fun. And 1987's Triumphant Agony. This is definitely Warlock's most popular album. The big songs on this one are All We Are, which got a really fun music video, I Rule the Ruins, and Für Immer. It's also got the first Warlock song I ever heard and remains my favorite song, Touch of Evil. Undoubtedly, I would say Doro, the vocalist, is the metal queen. And then moving on to thrash, we've got what is known as the American Big Four, which consists of the bands Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, and Slayer. Starting off with Metallica, the general consensus is that their first 4 albums are the best ones, and by most fans, the only ones that are actually considered thrash. Kill 'Em All came out in 1983. The fan favorites on this one are Four Horsemen, Whiplash, and Seek and Destroy. Ride the Lightning came out in 1984. Popular songs on this album are Ride the Lightning, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Creeping Death, and Fade to Black. This one is probably my favorite Metallica album. Then in 1986, we've got Master of Puppets. Popular songs on this one are Battery, Master of Puppets, Welcome Home Sanitarium, and Orion. In 1988, we've got Injustice for All, and the big song for this album is One. A lot of people know this song from Guitar Hero 3. And in 1991, we've got their 5th album, The Black Album. A lot of people don't consider this one to be a thrash album, but it is Metallica's most popular album, so I'll go ahead and talk about it. It's got some of their most well-known songs like Enter Sandman, Nothing Else Matters, and Wherever I May Roam. Now on to Megadeth. Fun fact, Dave Mustaine, the vocalist and guitarist of Megadeth, was actually originally a guitarist in Metallica. Unfortunately for Megadeth, I don't have a lot of notable albums to show you, I just never really got around to buying them, so I've got Endgame and This Greatest Hits, and I've got Peace Sells on cassette. Here's their 1986 album, Peace Sells. The two big songs on here are going to be Wake Up Dead and Peace Sells. In 1990, we've got Rust in Peace. It's got my personal favorite Megadeth song, Holy Wars, The Punishment Due, as well as Hangar 18 and Tornado of Souls. Then in 1992, we've got Countdown to Extinction. It's got Symphony of Destruction, their most popular song, also the song that got me listening to them, as well as Sweating Bullets. Anthrax's first album, Fistful of Metal from 1984, is probably my favorite. The two big songs on this one are Death Rider and Metal Thrashing Mad. Among the Living came out in 1987. Some of the big songs on here are Caught in a Mosh, I Am the Law, and Indians. And then on State of Euphoria that came out in 1988, the two popular songs on here are Be All End All and Antisocial. And then for Slayer, the two albums I would recommend would be Show No Mercy and Rain and Blood. Show No Mercy came out in 1983, and I would say the popular songs on this one are The Antichrist, Die by the Sword, and Black Magic. Rain and Blood came out in 1986, and the two popular ones on here are Raining Blood and Angel of Death. Now on to Overkill. This is their 1985 album, Feel the Fire, personally my favorite. The big song on this one is Brought Into the Core. It's also got an excellent cover of the Dead Boys' Sonic Reducer. I've also got their 1988 album, Under the Influence, and the popular song on this one is Hello from the Gutter. And then we've got the band Exodus, which a lot of people think should be in the Big Four. Fun fact is that Kirk Hammett, the guitarist of Metallica, actually came up with the band name for Exodus when he was initially in the band. Bonded by Blood came out in 1985, and the popular songs on here are Bonded by Blood, A Lesson in Violence, and Strike of the Beast. And their 1989 album, Fabulous Disaster, has one of the most quintessential moshing songs of all time, The Toxic Waltz. Here's the German thrash band Exhumer with their 1986 album, Possessed by Fire. The two popular songs on here are Possessed by Fire and Fallen Saint. Canadian band Razor's Evil Invaders album came out in 1985, and the big songs on this one are Evil Invaders, Cutthroat, and Cross Me Fool. Now onto death metal. I also changed into denim because leather was getting way too hot. The band Death is probably the one that comes to most people's minds first. I would say Symbolic is probably their most popular album. Symbolic and Crystal Mountain are some of the more well-known songs on here. Spiritual Healing came out in 1990. The most popular song on this one is Spiritual Healing. It's also got my favorite death song, which is Within the Mind. Next up, we've got the Finnish melodic death metal band, Children of Bodom. I would say they're probably my favorite death metal band, as well as the band that got me into more extreme metal. Being a melodic death metal band, they do have more melodic guitar progressions, as well as the added keyboard. They also like to use Grim Reapers as a reoccurring theme throughout their albums. Follow the Reaper came out in 2000, and I'd say the popular songs on here are Every Time I Die, Follow the Reaper, and Hate Me. In 2005, Are You Dead Yet came out. This is probably my favorite album. The two popular songs on here are You Dead Yet and In Your Face. Arch Enemy is definitely one that I see a lot of people getting really into when they first get into death metal. It's good to know that they've had 3 different vocalists. I'll be sharing albums from 2 of them. Wages of Sin, which came out in 2001, has their second vocalist, Angela. Personally, she's my favorite, and I would say this is probably my favorite Arch Enemy album. The popular songs on here are Enemy Within, Burning Angel, and Dead Bury Their Dead. This is their 2014 album, War Eternal, the first album with their third vocalist, Elisa. It's another one of the fan favorites. This one admittedly took me a while to get into. I really didn't like it at first, but once it grew on me, I really liked it. The 2 most popular songs on here are War Eternal and You Will Know My Name. Now, Edge of Sanity, I feel like is a band you don't hear about as much as I feel like you should, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about them. Their 1996 album, Crimson, is definitely my favorite. It's a little hard for some people to listen to because it's basically just one song that's 40 minutes long. But if that sounds up your alley, I highly recommend listening to it. It's a really great concept album. The whole thing is so good. It almost doesn't feel like you're listening to a 40-minute long song. This is their 1994 album, Purgatory Afterglow, and the 2 popular songs on here are Twilight and Black Tears. Now, Carcass is an absolutely fun one. This is my favorite album by them, and I think their most popular. It's called Surgical Steel, and it came out in 2013. The 2 most popular songs on here are 1985 and Unfit for Human Consumption. And here we've got Cannibal Corpse's Tomb of the Mutilated from 1992. Personally, I'm not a big Cannibal Corpse fan. They just never really grabbed me, but I don't think I can go without talking about them because so many people really love them. The 2 big songs on this one are Hammer Smashed Face and I Come Blood. I really like early Morbid Angel. This is their 1989 album, Altars of Madness. Definitely my favorite by them. Some of the popular songs on here are Immortal Rites, Chapel of Ghouls, and Maze of Torment. And here's their 1993 album, Covenant. The two popular songs on here are Rapture and God of Emptiness. And here's Amon Amarth's Deceiver of the Gods from 2013. Pretty much all of their albums involve themes of Vikings and Norse mythology. It's really fun stuff. They're really great musicians, super fun live. Two popular songs on here are Deceiver of the Gods and Father of the Wolf. So with glam metal being up next, I want to talk about the genre a little bit first. I would definitely say it's more of the party and fun times genre for metal. It's usually got a little bit of a pop and mainstream influence more attached to it, so a lot of metalheads will often refer to it with kind of a negative connotation. But I wouldn't let that deter you from the genre in any way. It's a super fun genre, it's got a lot of fun things to offer. I think that glam metal is also one of the easiest roads to getting into metal because it's just a lot more palatable for a lot of people. The first band I'm going to go ahead and talk about is Motley Crue. I would say that they are the ultimate glam metal band. Now, as someone who's not super into glam metal, this actually makes me not like them at all, but they are a huge one for a lot of people. Shout at the Devil, I would say, is probably their most popular album, and some of their most popular songs in general are going to be Girls, 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 Livewire, Shout at the Devil, Dr. Feelgood, and Smoking in the Boys' Room. Now Poison, the next band, I do surprisingly enough have a tape for them, even though I'm not really into them all that much. But I found it at the thrift store as a teen and I thought the logo looked cool, so I went ahead and bought it. Some of Poison's most popular songs are Every Rose Has Its Thorn, Nothing But a Good Time, Talk Dirty to Me, and Unskinny Bop. Now Cinderella I actually really like. This is their most well-known album, Night Songs, and some of the most popular songs on here are going to be Nobody's Fool and Somebody Save Me. Rat is another well-known one, mainly for their song Round and Round off of their album Out of the Cellar from 1984. I'm Insane is another popular song off of that album, and their 1985 album Invasion of Your Privacy is probably my favorite at the moment. Its two popular songs are Lay It Down and You're in Love. And then there's Dokken, which is another one of my more recent favorites. They might be most well known for their song Dream Warriors, which appears in Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. Here's their 1984 album Tooth and Nail. The two most well known songs on here are Alone Again and Into the Fire. And then here's their 1985 album, my favorite, Under Lock and Key. I'd say this one probably has most of their hits on it, some of those being In Your Dreams, Unchain the Night, It's Not Love, and The Hunter. And Def Leppard is another one I would assume most people know. They've got a lot of really popular songs. This is my favorite album by them. It's Pyromania from 1983. The most well-known songs on this album are Photograph, Foolin', and Rock of Ages. I especially love the video for Rock of Ages. And here's Hysteria from 1987. This one has almost too many hits to name. Some of the big ones being Pour Some Sugar on Me, Love Bites, Animal, and Hysteria. And fun fact about Def Leppard is that Rick Allen, their drummer, actually lost one of his arms in 1984 before Hysteria's release. It took a little while for Hysteria to come out because he actually had to relearn how to drum with one arm. I think that's pretty cool. And next up, we've got power metal. This genre focuses a lot on themes like fighting dragons, fantasy, maybe historic events, things kind of in that realm. This is Manowar's Kings of Metal album. It came out in 1988. Some of the big songs on this one are Kings of Metal, Hail and Kill, and Heart of Steel. Helloween is one of my favorites as far as the subgenre goes. This is their 1988 album, Keeper of the Seven Keys, Part 2. Some of the popular songs on this one are I Want Out, Keeper of the Seven Keys, and Eagle Fly Free. This is Dragon Force's Inhuman Rampage. Came out in 2006. It's got their most popular song, Through the Fire and Flames, on it. Many of you probably know it as that really hard song on Guitar Hero. Battle Beast is a newer band that's so fun. This is their 2014 self-titled album, and the two big songs on this one are Out of Control and Black Ninja. This is Sabaton's Heroes from 2014. This band especially focuses their songs on being about historic events. The popular songs on this album are To Hell and Back and Night Witches. And here's Unleash the Archers, they're my favorite power metal band. So this one's kind of a two-part concept album. The first one is Apex from 2014, and the second one is Abyss from 2020. It's a concept that spans two albums. The first one in Apex ends off on a cliffhanger and then follows up with Abyss. Because of that, I find it hard to recommend specific songs. I just feel like it's something that you have to listen to in the correct order all the way through. Although on both albums they are great songs and they do hold up on their own if you do listen to them, I just feel like you're missing part of the experience. If you want songs that are meant to be standalone, then their 2015 album Time Stands Still is going to be the one for you. Also jam-packed full of really fun, energetic songs. This whole album is fantastic, but the ones I'd recommend most off of here would be Tonight We Ride, Test Your Metal, and Time Stands Still. Nu metal, spelled N-U, not N-E-W, is a subgenre that I've seen a huge resurgence in lately. It's not one that I ever really got into, but I'll go ahead and list off some of the ones I like or the ones that are most popular. And if you like rap, then this subgenre might be a good one for you to start with, because a lot of these bands do incorporate elements of rap. Slipknot is one of the most popular of this genre. Here's Slipknot's Volume 3 album from 2004, and the two fan favorites on this album are Before I Forget and Duality. And here we've got Korn's Follow the Leader album from 1998. Popular songs off of this album are the well-known Freak on a Leash and Got the Life. Here's System of a Down's Toxicity from 2001, and on the front it shows the hits Toxicity and Chop Suey. Another well-known one is Aerials. This is one a lot of people probably know some songs off of. It's Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory from 2000. It's got In the End, played on the radio like non-stop when I was growing up, and then also Crawling. Here's Static X's most popular album, Wisconsin Death Trip from 1999. Its fan favorites are Push It, Bled for Days, and I'm With Stupid. Machine from 2001, this has my favorite Static X song on it, which is Cold. It also has the song This Is Not. You just had to love Wayne Static's hair. Here's probably my favorite nu metal band, Rage Against the Machine. This is their self-titled album from 1992. It's got songs like Killing in the Name Of, Bomb Track, Know Your Enemy, and Wake Up, which was featured in The Matrix. This is Evil Empire from 1996 with the song Bulls on Parade. Here's Battle of Los Angeles from 1999. Some of the big songs on here are Guerrilla Radio and Sleep Now in the Fire. Now, black metal I have to be a little bit cautionary about just because it does have a pretty bad reputation. Some of that is rightfully so, but I do think that reputation does tend to overshadow a lot of the good that genre does have to offer. It's also good to note that black metal has 3 different waves, all of which are pretty different. A lot of first waves some people don't consider to be actual black metal. You can kind of think of it as like proto-black metal. Personally, I include it. Second is usually kind of what people usually think of when they think of black metal, which is like Norwegian black metal kind of style music. Third wave can be a lot of different things, varying from depressive suicidal black metal to ambient to symphonic. It can be kind of all over the place. You've also probably seen what is known as corpse paint float around. That's pretty specific to black metal. Here are a few examples of that. We'll go ahead and start off with my favorite, Venom. They're considered first wave, so they're kind of in the line of like thrash and speed metal. This is their 1981 album, Welcome to Hell. The 2 popular songs on here are Welcome to Hell and In League with Satan. Look at how pretty this vinyl is. And then this is their 1982 album, Black Metal, which actually is what coined the term for the genre. Some of the most popular songs on here, even though it's got quite a bit, this is definitely their most popular album, are going to be Black Metal, Don't Burn the Witch, and Countess Bathory. Speaking of Bathory, here's the band Bathory. This is their self-titled album from 1984. Some of the popular songs on here are Hades, Necromancy, and Reaper. Mayhem is one of the bands that black metal is most well known for. Personally, I think it's very overrated. I think most people mainly like Mayhem because of the history behind the band, and it's one of the first ones you hear about when you start getting into black metal. I would say that their music is pretty mediocre compared to a lot of what the genre has to offer, but if you're going to listen to them, this one's a pretty good one, the Death Crush EP. Death Crush and Chainsaw Gutsfuck are probably the best tracks on here. Carpathian Forest is the band that got me into black metal. The song specifically isn't on this album. It's called It's Darker Than You Think off of their album from 2003, Defending the Throne of Evil. This is the album Black Shining Leather from 1998. That's actually my favorite song on here is Black Shining Leather. Oddly enough, the most popular song on here is a Cure cover of the song A Forest. Dimmu Borgir is a really good one. This is their album from 1997, Enthroned Darkness Triumphant. Some of my favorite songs on here are Master of Disharmony, that's my favorite song by them, and then Morning Palace and Spellbound. This one's also got some symphonic elements, so if that's your thing, definitely check this band out. Of course, I've got to mention the band Darkthrone as well. A Blaze in the Northern Sky from 1991 is one of my favorites by them. Some of the popular tracks off of this one are Catharian Life Code, A Blaze in the Northern Sky, and In the Shadow of the Horns. I absolutely love Miracure. This is her 2017 album Meredith. If you want like one of the perfect winter albums for when it's snowing outside, this is it. And I simply cannot pronounce a lot of these track names, so I'll just go ahead and point them out and then say like the English translation for some of them. So some of the popular tracks are Meredith, Moonblood, and Wolfwind. Also some appreciation for this colored vinyl. And then here we've got Spectral Wounds, A Diabolic Thirst from 2021. The most popular song on here is Frigid and Spellbound. Also, I'm begging you, if you want to find accurate information on the 90s Norwegian black metal scene, I highly recommend giving Until the Light Takes Us a watch. It's pretty unbiased and it gives you a lot of really good information with actual interviews with a lot of the band members. And if you do come across the movie Lords of Chaos, just know before you watch it that it's extremely Hollywoodized. I wouldn't really take anything in it as actual fact. That should be a given, but I do see a lot of misinformation out there because of it. The next subgenre is symphonic metal. This one often includes symphonies as well as classically trained vocalists with metal, which just creates an absolutely delightful pairing. Epica, I would say, is my favorite symphonic metal band. This is their album from 2004, The Phantom Agony. My favorite song on here, as well as their most popular song, is Cry for the Moon. And this is their 2009 album, Design Your Universe. I would say the songs I'd recommend from here are Unleashed, Martyr of the Free World, and Kingdom of Heaven. And then Nightwish, I wasn't ever really able to get into them, but I would say that they're the most popular as far as this genre goes. This is the album I'd probably recommend. It's Century Child from 2002. I think it has the most appealing song from them, which is Phantom of the Opera. It's also got End of All Hope, which is pretty good. And then this is Tarja, her solo project. She was once in Nightwish. This is her most popular album, My Winter Storm. Some of the fan favorite songs on here are I Walk Alone, Poison, and Oasis. I also highly recommend these albums that go together, The Brightest Void and Shadow Self, as well as her single, Victim of Ritual. And then we've got doom metal. Probably the best way to describe doom metal is that it's usually slower but very heavy. It might have some droney aspects or some very gothic elements. It really varies depending on the band. Now, Black Sabbath is technically considered a doom metal band. I think songs like Children of the Grave definitely enforce that. And of course, we've also got to mention Black Sabbath's first album, their self-titled from 1970, with the songs Black Sabbath and The Wizard. This album is definitely a blueprint for what doom metal has become today. Candlemass is an excellent example of doom metal. I'm absolutely in love with this band. This album is Nightfall from 1987. Bewitched is definitely the most popular track off of this album. At Gallows End is probably my favorite, and The Well of Souls is also very popular. Cannot recommend this one enough. This is Pentagram's Be Forewarned from 2005. Be Forewarned is probably the most well-known song off of this album. This is Reverend Bazaar's In the Rectory of the Bazaar Reverend from 2002. The popular songs off of this album are Burn in Hell and Doom Sower. Here is Electric Wizard's Dope Throne from 2006. Personally, I could never really get into Electric Wizard. It kind of crosses that line between stoner metal and doom metal. Two of the popular songs off of this are Funeralopolis and Dope Throne. And then if you guys want a couple of other fun things to look into or some homework, here are a few things you can check out. You could look up footage from Headbangers Ball and Heavy Metal Mania on YouTube. There's a lot of fun interviews and music videos, things like that. Or also Heavy Metal Parking Lot. It's a pretty short fun watch that's basically a bunch of people in a parking lot waiting for Judas Priest to play in 1986. And then we've also got a couple of fun movies. Here's Tenacious D and The Pick of Destiny. If you guys didn't know, Jack Black is in a band. This movie's about his band, and it features a lot of other really great musicians. We've got Airheads. This one follows a band that just wants to get heard and ends up accidentally taking over a radio station. Deathgasm is a New Zealand horror comedy. And Metalhead. This one is an Icelandic drama with an outstanding soundtrack. Again, we have Until the Light Takes Us if you want to learn about black metal. The 9 Lives of Ozzy Osbourne is a pretty good documentary about Ozzy Osbourne. Pretty sure you can find this one on Hulu. And then Dreamers Never Die is a Dio documentary. Absolutely loved this one. It's on Showtime. And if you like reading, I've got a couple of books for you. I'm really into biographies myself, so that's what I'll be recommending. If you get into Judas Priest and you want to learn more about them, Rob Halford, the vocalist, has a biography. Absolutely fantastic. He's got an audiobook and narrates it himself, so it's kind of like he's telling you about his story. It's really well done. KK Downing, one of Judas Priest's guitarists, also has a book. It's really fun to read them both and kind of compare them and hear both sides of the story. There's also Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden's What Does This Button Do? Talks about him being in Iron Maiden, flying airplanes, fencing, all sorts of fun stuff. It's also narrated by him, which is great. And I also went ahead and I made a Spotify playlist for each of the subgenres I mentioned. So if you're really interested and you want to check those out, you can go to my Spotify. It's just Maddie Danger on there. I've got more bands than what I listed in each of the playlists on there, and they might give you an idea of what you like or what you want to explore more. Hopefully some of you find this video helpful. Feel free to let me know what your favorite metal band is or the band that got you into metal in the comments, or ask any questions.